not like a pea plant that can have hundreds and hundreds of offspring. So, but we've figured out some things about human genetics, and some of them are pretty interesting. First one I want to talk about is blood type, and blood type was a very important discovery because it really helped in medicine. Red blood cells have two different antigens. Basically, it's a carbohydrate that attaches to the red blood cell. And one of the antigens is called A, and the other antigen is called B. And the reason why they call it an antigen is that the body will produce antibodies that will attack the antigens, or attack the red blood cells with the antigens on it. So it's important to know what a person's blood type is, because they have antibodies in their blood to attack the antigens they don't have on their blood cells. So there are 4 possible blood types: A, B, AB, and O. And as you can see, A blood type has the A carbohydrate on the red blood cell. B blood type has the B carbohydrate on the blood cell. AB has A and B on the blood cell, and the O has no antigen on the blood cell, no carbohydrate present at all. And one of the other important things to remember is that if A antigen is on a red blood cell, they're going to attack blood cells that have the B antigen. So someone with A blood can give to somebody who has A blood type, or somebody who has A and B blood type, because they're not going to attack that blood. You can receive, someone who has A blood can receive A blood. They can also receive O blood, because O has no antigens. And this is true for all of these. You can see that the O can only receive from somebody who is O, but they can give, or they can donate to any other blood type. They call O the universal donor. Now, if you notice, it's one gene and there are 3 alleles, so this is an example of multiple alleles. But the alleles for the A antigen and the B antigen are codominant, because if both of them are present, in other words, if you're IA, IB, then you'll have both A and B antigens on your blood, not one or the other. So blood groups are not only have multiple alleles, but there also is a codominance in it and a dominance over the other, over I, which codes for O blood type. And you can see anybody with IBI or IAI is going to have A or B blood type. So in addition to the ABO antigens, there's another antigen on the blood cell which is called the RH antigen. And this one's actually pretty simple. If you have the antigen, you're Rh positive, which means you have the carbohydrate on your cell. Or if you don't have the Rh antigen, then it's considered Rh negative. And it's one gene. There are only 2 alleles for it, and the Rh positive allele is dominant. This is pretty similar to what we already know. And by the way, this was Rh stands for rhesus monkey, which was the animal where this trait was discovered. Now, PKU is a disease that causes a person not to be able to make tyrosine from phenylalanine. And I'm not going to go into the disease too much, but this is a recessive allele, PKU, and it is so as you can see, it's if both parents have the allele, if the parents don't give the allele to the child, then it's going to be a normal child. If one of the parents gives the allele to the child, then the child is going to be what's called a carrier. They're not going to have the disease, but they're going to have the allele. And then finally, if both parents give this allele to the child is going to have the disorder. So you have to inherit an allele from both parents. And this is what we call an autosomal recessive disease. It's found on the autosomal chromosome, and it's recessive, meaning you have to have two recessive alleles to end up with the disease. Now let's contrast this with Huntington's disease, which is a disease that is caused by a dominant allele, meaning you have the allele, you have the disease. You can see this person is heterozygous big B little b, and that means they have the disease. They're going to pass on to 50% of their children if they marry somebody who doesn't have the disease at all. 50% of them should get the dominant allele for it and therefore have the disease. And this is what we call an autosomal dominant disease, meaning there's a dominant allele that causes the disease. Now, this is cystic fibrosis, and the interesting part about cystic fibrosis is that it's one very, very small little change. There's a deletion of some deletion of 3 DNA bases, and as a result, they don't make the amino acid phenylalanine for the CFTR protein. The CFTR protein is used to transport chloride ions, and if you don't have that, the normal CFTR, you can't transport it, and as a result, you end up with with the chloride loss, you end up with creating mucus that becomes clogged in your lungs and makes breathing very, very difficult. I'm actually a carrier of this allele, the CFTR allele, and it's interesting. It's just three DNA bases that are missing. It's a very, very small little mistake in that gene. I haven't passed it on to anybody, but I've been screened for it, and as a result, my son will probably have to be careful. I don't think my daughter's a carrier, but I know my son is, and that's how we first found out about it. So now here's a even smaller mistake. This is from sickle cell anemia, which is there's a codominant allele that causes sickle cell anemia. Now this allele is very, very interesting because while it can cause a really terrible illness, it also is very advantageous to be a carrier. So what happens is that it was one base changed, like adenine was changed to a thymine, and as a result, it's the valine, the amino acid valine, is substituted for glutamic acid in hemoglobin, which is a protein found in your blood. And what happens is that the blood turns into a sickle shape, like this, rather than the healthy disc shape like that, when there is a decrease in oxygen in the blood. And as a result, somebody who has these sickled cells is said to be anemic, and it's very hard for them to do any real exercise that causes them to end up with sickled cells, and these sickle cells then are attacked by your own immune system to get rid of them. Now, the parasite that carries sickle cell is carried by the mosquito to a human, and when they bite, the mosquito bites, the parasite enters the blood cells. Now, the parasite needs healthy blood cells to survive, and what ends up happening is people who have both the healthy allele and the sickle cell allele have some healthy blood cells and then some sickled blood cells, so they have the ability to have this blood cell sickle, and as a result, they end up when they're bitten by a mosquito with malaria, their blood cells die or they sickle, and as a result, the malaria parasite can't really live in their blood. A person who is homozygous normal, though, doesn't have the sickling ability, and as a result, they are prone to malaria. And a person who is homozygous with the sickle alleles is they're immune to malaria, but that's really unimportant for them when they are susceptible to this really debilitating anemia. And sure enough, the sickle cell allele is very common in areas where malaria is common. And as you can see, this is a map of Africa showing the distribution of the sickle cell gene and also the sickle cell, malaria, and where malaria is found. And you'll see that the two are, the maps overlap quite a bit. So this is just a concept map to review it, and you can see some of these here with the example of the recessive alleles, dominant alleles, and codominant alleles. And there's some other diseases in here. I didn't go through all these diseases, but they are things that you can look up there in your textbook and also in some charts that you can see. And that's the end of this section.